are you capable of using your manhood? And he says, yes, although he's getting super embarrassed. And she looks between Kale and Nezrin, and she's like, have you used it to completion? And he says, how is that relevant? And in his head, he's like, how has she gleaned what was between them? Irene only wrote something down. What are you writing? He demanded, cursing the damned chair for keeping him from storming to rip the paper out of her hands. I'm writing a giant no. I also really liked the dynamic between Lorcan and Eli, but also, like, fuck Lorcan. Hey friends, my name is Rachel, and welcome to October's reading wrap-up. So this month, I read 2 books. I read Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. I did do the tandem read of these books. That's one of the popular ways to do it. There is this, like, neat guy out there with there's the romantic read and the purist read, and then there's the option to do tandem read of Empire of Storms, Tower of Dawn, and that's what I decided to do. These books were a doozy. Alright, so starting with Empire of Storms. I did read these at the same time, but I'll do separate, like, wrap-ups for each. Empire of Storms, it is a fantasy. The book length is 689 pages. My rating was 5 stars. My spice rating was 3 peppers. And this book is multi-point of view told in third person. Getting into our plot summary, it's a little difficult to do this because it's, like, part of a series, obviously. This is book 6 in the series. Book 6, I don't know. Some people say it's book 5 if you're not accounting for the Assassin's Blade, but I am, so book 6. I also got a lot of tabs on this one. But I'll do a little plot summary, but I don't want to spoil anything. But obviously, if you haven't read the series, don't watch this video. Alright, so when we start off the book, Aelin and her court are traveling back to Terrasen to claim her rightful heir to the throne. They end up getting to Terrasen in the first couple of chapters, and they set up a meeting with the remaining lords of Terrasen so that they can discuss Aelin's ascension to the throne. Basically, the one lord has kind of been acting as king while Aelin has been gone, and he's chatted with the other lords, and they decided, no, Aelin cannot claim her right to the throne. They don't trust her to do so. They say she's untried. She's only 19. She's got her, like, fire magic, and they don't trust her to lead the country. She's like, well, you know what? I'm still gonna save our kingdom from Morath and Erewhon, and we're gonna go raise an army. So Aelin and crew head out to do so. Meanwhile, the 13 and Manan, they are tasked with sacking Rifthold. Erewhon has been introduced at this point. We kind of heard about him towards, like, middle to end of Queen of Shadows, but in this book, Lord Parrington is no more. Erewhon has fully taken control of his body. Erewhon has given the order to Manan and her 13, as well as Iskra Yellowleg's covens that she leads from the Farian Gap. They are to go lay siege to Rifthold and take it over, and either I think the order was bring Dorian back alive. They don't want to kill him. The 13 is off. Manan feels pretty mixed about this mission. She has helped Dorian in the past, so Manan's not having good feelings. They get to Rifthold. Aelin's crew has actually heard that Rifthold's gonna be sacked. The little people have been leaving messages for Aelin, so she actually sends Rowan to go save Dorian because he can get back to Rifthold the fastest. Without spoiling all the events that happen during the fight, Rowan saves Dorian, and they get out of the city, and they flee in a boat, and they head down to Skull's Bay. But Manan makes some interesting choices during this siege, and there's some consequences with the Iron Teeth because they are not happy when the 13 return to Morath. Manon's dealing with that. Rowan and Dorian are off to Skull's Bay. Aelin and crew are doing some things around Terrasen, and then they actually also head to Skull's Bay to meet up with Rowan. Then we jump over to Elide Lorkharn, which this is the pronunciation I saw from the wiki, so I thought it was Elide Lorkhan, but the wiki actually says Elide Lorkharn. So, at the end of Queen of Shadows, Caltaine Rompier saves Elide and most of the people suffering in Morath. She saves them by destroying the place and killing them. But Elide makes it out, and Manon takes her to the Oakwalled Forest away from Morath so that she can start making her way to Terrasen. And Manon just leaves Elide by herself to make the trek northward, because Manon, is still loyal to the coven, and she can't just leave to go take Elide to Terrasen. So we jump over to Elide Lorkharn, who is working her way to Terrasen through the Oakwalled Forest, and she's trying to stay away from the Farian Gap, and she's just kind of struggling her way up when she feels like someone's watching her, and she is trying to shake their tail. Well, who is watching her? Lorcan Salvatore. We met Lorcan in Airfire. He was one of Rowan's cadre? I don't know if that's how you say it, but yeah, so Lorcan is back, and he is hunting Elide. We found out that Lorcan's actually on his way to Morath. He wants to take the word key from Erewhon, and he believes Erewhon has two, and that he believes he has one that Aelin gave him, which she actually didn't give him, but he doesn't know this yet. He kind of starts stalking Elide, and eventually she figures out it's him because she gets attacked by these new creepy creatures from Morath, and they end up becoming travel buddies. He says he'll protect her and help her get to the north. Elide and Lorcan, they're a thing now. So there's a lot of things that happen in this book, and I don't want to go too far into it because that would just spoil the whole book. But basically we have all those different points of view. That's where they kind of start off the book. A decent amount of things happen, but eventually all of the key players end up converging at some point, and there's a couple of battles which are pretty epic. But we do also get to learn more background about Elena Galathinius and her role in guiding Aelin, because she's been pretty vaguely helping Aelin out since the first book, Throne of Glass. So we actually get to hear more background about her. And I'll say that the last couple of chapters were heartbreaking. It was bad. There's definitely a big cliffhanger, and I think the entire last couple of chapters I was just yikes. Not to say that, yeah, I won't spoil it, but last couple of chapters, gear up. So, trigger warnings. We have blood, gore, violence, typical war themes, torture, and slavery. My thoughts on this book. So I loved how SJM was able to seamlessly tie in references from previous books and plot points from previous books into this series. It has very satisfying payoff when you read it. It's like Aelin did this thing back in book 3 or whatever, and it actually was impactful to this. It wasn't just some random thing that she did, and it's just very. I like how it just all ties together. It's no book is unimportant. So I really like that SJM does that. Again, the revealing of Aelin's scheming is also super satisfying. Sometimes it'll be very vague, Aelin realizes something, or she goes and does something inconspicuous, and you're what is she doing? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, like, it was leading up to that. So I love the reveals of Aylin's scheming. I also love how we finally see, in this book specifically, we finally see multiple couples get together. It's been hinted at throughout the last couple of books, but now finally things are converging and key players are finally doing their thing. The battle scenes were super epic. I loved all the different transformations that Lysander had. She had some really cool transformations, and she's just a very cool character in general. I honestly didn't expect to see her again after reading The Assassin's Blade, and I'm so glad she's like a key character in the book, in the series. I also really liked the dynamic between Lorcan and Elide, but also, like, fuck Lorcan. Yeah, and the ending was very upsetting. So those were my thoughts on Empire of Storms. I did pick out 2 quotes for this video. I obviously picked out more than that, but 2 quotes that I think kind of encompass my favorite parts, I guess. So the first one is, I love you. There is no limit to what I can give you, no time I need. Even when the world is a forgotten whisper of dust between the stars, I will love you. And the second quote, it's not such a hard thing, is it, to die for your friends? No, it is not. I just really, those quotes specifically, love them. So that was Empire of Storms. I do highly recommend doing the tandem read if you haven't read before. I don't think, so people don't like Tower of Dawn, which is sad because I love Tower of Dawn. But they're different sets of characters and their events are happening chronologically at the same time. So the tandem read makes a ton of sense. It's kind of just one massive book with all the different characters' points of view. That's how I view the tandem read. And I don't think it took away from either book. I think it just kind of added to the experience. So highly recommend doing the tandem read. But moving on to Tower of Dawn. Tower of Dawn is also fantasy. Same series. It's 660 pages. I gave it 5 stars. My spice rating was 2 peppers. And this one is also multi-point of view, told in third person. So this one, I have a bit more plot to discuss than the last one, because this one has a lot of new elements. It's like not directly a continuation of Queen of Shadows. There's a lot of like new people introduced. So this one's a bit different. So at the end of Queen of Shadows, Chaol is severely injured from the fight with the king, and he is paralyzed from the waist down. He cannot walk, he can't use his legs, or anything. So he and Nezrin head to Antica in the southern continent, where Chaol is to receive healing from the healers at the famed Torre Sesme. Their secondary goal is to try to convince the ruler of the country, the Kagan, to bring his armies to help in the northern continent. They actually get to stay in the palace of the Great Kagan and his 5 children. His children's names are Argon, he is kind of like a spy master. Sartak, he is the leader of the Rukin. Kashin, I think he leads the Dargan. I can't remember. It's like the horse peoples and the steppes. Hosara leads the Armadas, and Dufa, his youngest, was recently married, and she's just kind of there. She doesn't have like a specific role like her siblings. At least it's not discussed that she has a specific role. But there was actually a 6th child that they recently lost, the absolute youngest, named Tumaloon. She was claimed to have mood swings. Trigger warning, she was claimed to jump to her death from a balcony. However, Kashin suspects there was foul play, which definitely gets discussed later on in the book. So when they arrive to the continent, the family's grieving over the loss of Tumaloon. They are welcoming to Chaol and Nezrin, but they're like, we don't want to discuss war right now. Chaol gets assigned a healer from the Torre Sesme, and who is it other than Irene Towers, who we actually met in the second story of The Assassin's Blade, the assassin and the healer. This was the young healer in the town of Inish that Selena ran into, who was trying to leave the town so that she could go study at the Torre. And obviously, she ends up at the Torre Sesame and becomes a fantastic healer. So, Irene Towers is the heir apparent to becoming the next healer on high at the Torre Sesame. She's extremely gifted. However, she doesn't have plans to stay in the southern continent. She wants to return to the northern continent and help during this war. She's originally from the territory Fenhero, I guess kingdom, but she's from the kingdom of Fenhero, and she wants to go help her people and help against Erewhon in this war. But before she leaves, the healer on high, the current one, Hafiza, has tasked her with one last test, and it is healing Kaol. Irene hates Kaol because he is from Adarlan, which is very hard to say, and I've never actually said it out loud. Adarlan. Why is the name so tough? But anyway, she's assigned to Kaol. She's mostly assigned, like, it's gonna be a tricky healing to heal his spine, but she's mostly assigned to get over herself, basically, and understand that not everyone from Adarland is, I feel like I'm saying Adarland, but she's basically assigned to overcome her hatred of people from the kingdom of Adarland. But she's gonna have a tough time with this, and Kaol is just Kaol, and he's also gonna have a tough time with this. When she first goes to heal Kaol, which actually there's a really funny moment that I tagged that I thought was hilarious, that I want to read aloud real quick. So she goes to meet him, and she is doing like a preliminary assessment, and she says, you know, are you capable of using your manhood? And he says, yes, although he's getting super embarrassed. And she looks between Kaol and Nezrin, and she's like, have you used it to completion? And he says, how is that relevant? In his head, he's like, how has she gleaned what was between them? Irene only wrote something down. What are you writing? He demanded, cursing the damned chair for keeping him from storming to rip the paper out of her hands. I'm writing a giant no. Oh my god, this made me laugh out loud. It was so funny. That was their initial meeting, was Irene was super sassy with Kaol. She was having none of it. During that initial meeting, she goes to go into his wound for the first time and see like what's up with it. And she puts her hand on his back, and her magic immediately repulses. And she's like, what kind of wound is this? Like, this is nothing I've come across before. There's a darkness in you. Kaol doesn't tell her all the details, but he kind of tells her, like, yeah, the people we're fighting we're not fighting Adarland anymore. We are fighting demons and Valg from Morath. He tells her of the Valg, and she's like, well, I need to go do more research into this because I need to figure out how I can heal this wound from you. So she goes back to the Torre library, and she asks the head librarian to pull up wounds from demons and stuff like that. And as she's reading in the library, she gets the sense that something is watching her from the shadows, and she's like, I need to go. And as she's leaving, she feels like she's being stalked. And on her way out, she actually comes across a healer who has been sucked dry. She's just like leathery skin and bones, which is exactly how we found our first victim of the Valg in Air of Fire, when Selena found, either Selena or Rowan found that person that was completely drained in Doranel. It's the same thing here, and Irene is freaking the fuck out. I mean, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? And they ring the bells and they get the guards in, but they won't find anything. When Irene goes to tell Kaol of this, they're like, shit, there's a Valg down here. The war is already down here. So there's this bit of mystery throughout the whole book of who is this Valg? Is it Valg? But who is this person that is stalking Irene? And she's definitely in danger. And it only seemed to come up when she started working with Kaol. And it seems that they don't want Irene to learn the truth about what's going on while she's healing him. So that's a super interesting aspect throughout the whole book. This mystery, which I absolutely loved. The creepy library scene was very creepy. I was like home alone that night, and because my fiance was like on work travel or something, I was home alone and I read that scene, and I'm like, it was like the last chapter I was reading before bed, and I was like, I can't sleep like this. Throughout the book, Irene and Kale make progress on his wound, and Kale is also working on getting an audience with the Kagan, which has been very difficult since he's been in grieving and has been busy. Meanwhile, Nesrin was trying to seek out this Valg in the city. She's been wandering all over when one of the Kagan's children, Prince Sartak, is kind of like, what are you doing? He comes across her, and she confides in him some of the details. She doesn't know how much she can trust him. But he starts helping her seek out this Valg, and he says, well, maybe my Hearth Mother down in the Tavan Mountains knows something, because she's a storyteller, and they have found evidence that Valg have been on this continent before. So she and Sartak take his Rook, which is this big, like, bird creature that they can ride on. They take it down to the area where his Hearth Mother is, and they get an audience with her, and she's like, she tells them some of what she knows, but she also says that the Karankwi, I don't know if I said that right, the Karankwi, which is basically the Stygian spiders in the northern continent, is the same type of species. They are stirring, and they believe that they've been taking hatchlings from the Ares. So Nezra and Sartak are like, well, we gotta investigate that. During their investigations, they find out some very interesting information about the Queen of Fae, Maeve. This book is pretty wild. I loved it, and the plot twists in the end were like, whew, crazy. So that's where I will leave the plot summary, so I don't avoid spoiling. But trigger warnings for this one: ableism / paralysis, and how Kale's dealing with it. He's definitely being treated differently by a lot of people for being in his chair, and he's having a very tough time with it. There's blood, gore, violence, and there's war themes. Those were like the major ones. My thoughts? I cannot believe people don't like this book. I read that I think people don't like it because as they were reading the series when it was being published, there was that big cliffhanger of Empire Storms. And instead of continuing that story, we kind of got this different story with Kale, Irene, and Nesrin's point of views. And I think people were just salty that they didn't get to read more about Aelin and what happened to her. But this was still a fire book. That's what I thought. I loved that we were in a completely different area. And I loved that there was a map. So we got the map of the southern continent. I love that there was a new map to explore, because in Heir of Fire, we spent a ton of time in Wendelin and Doranel, and there was no map. And I was like, where are we? So I really enjoyed that they put a map in this book. And I just loved exploring the different parts of this continent, the different politics and the way that their kingdom is set up. Super interesting. I had a lot of political intrigue in this one. I said that the tandem read made so much sense. The way that specifically, I'll link this in the video description to get your own like printout. But the way this is set up makes so much sense. At least I thought so. I also loved the dynamic between Kale and Irene, but also between Nesrin and Sartak. Loved it. And my final thing is that SJM writes the creepiest libraries. I don't know how she does it. It's like every book I've read. In ACOTAR, we have House of the Wind? Is that what it's called? I think so. House of the Wind. There's like this creepy ass library beneath it where each level you go down just gets darker and darker. And there's actually something fucking living at the bottom that's like evil. So we got that library. We got the library in Throne of Glass, where when Aelin was studying, there was like some creature running around, and there's also like hidden passageways to like underneath the palace with all these like dungeons and shit. So that was creepy. And then this one, it's like the library attached to the fucking like healing tower, you know, the Torre Sesame. And it's like dim in there. There's always something lurking in the shadows. And it's like, libraries are supposed to be peaceful and nice. Why are there things lurking in the shadows? So I got beef with SJM on the way she like writes her libraries. But I do have 2 quotes from this one that I wanted to say. First one, this is from Irene. And I like this one. I once lived in fear of other people. I let other people walk all over me just because I was too afraid of the consequences for refusing. I did not know how to refuse. The day I reach these shores, I cast aside that girl, and I will be damned if I let her reemerge, or let someone tell me what to do with my life, my choices, again. So we got some of sassy Irene there. And then the last one, this is definitely spoilers, so I'll put a timestamp that you can skip to. I wanted to heal you, she breathed. You did, he said, smiling. Irene, in every way that truly matters, you did. Also, we got a Benny cat. Do you want to say hello to the fellow bookworms? Oh. Hello, baby. My cat is pretty obsessed with me. Yeah, so that being said, that was my October reads. I will definitely not have this done because today's the 27th, but I'm definitely not reading Kingdom of Ash by the end of this month. So this is going to be in November's wrap up. Just look at how thick this book is. It's 980 pages. I weighed this on my scale. It's like over 3 pounds. But yeah, I'm already on page 154. Good so far. I'm not ready for the series to be over, but November, we should be done with Kingdom of Ash. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!